Hi, everyone, and welcome to Chinese EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out about this podcast to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the Managing Director at Sino Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which, of course, I encourage you all to do. Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Bonjour, de mon côté.
Yeah. Well, yeah, opening ceremonies tonight, right? So,
pardon my French. Good morning from my side. That's what I said. This is your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 173. Welcome to an special Olympics opening ceremony episode of China EVs and More. And guess who's making headlines in Paris? Xiaomi SU7 with that pop-up, right?
yes.
We're trying to find all, EV factors we can. Definitely AVs are making headlines because of the few, and EVs for that matter, IPO potential IPOs in the US. Shall we start there?
Yeah, let's do that. There are two in particular that we're talking about, correct?
You must be referring to one Pony and the other one Windrose. Is that what you're thinking of?
Oh, I was thinking WeRide. Well,
WeRide as well, the two AV companies, and then Windrose we'll probably get into. They also have ambitions on the AV part of it, autonomous trucking.
This is where I wanted to ask you because, we'd heard of them. I don't know that much about them, unfortunately, which is surprising because normally I learn about these companies pretty quickly. So I'm going to tap your knowledge about them. But let's do this. Let's start with the immediate news about Pony and potentially IPOing next month or in September.
Yeah, I guess we're looking at possibly two IPOs coming by the end of the year of two of the big three, I would say, of the China AV Inc., Pony and WeRide.
The OGs.
The OGs,
by the way.
Right. And the two of them, together with Baidu, are what I refers to as the big three. They're often side by side when it comes to getting these permits in these different cities. And I think Pony is, maybe it's not the only one, but it's one that has gotten permits to demonstrate fully driverless ride-hail robotaxis in all four tier 1 cities.
Right.
I don't remember what the case is for the other two, but Pony, I think in early July, just got the permit for Shanghai.
My experience with a safety driver and lack of a safety driver, it is different. I look at the ride quite differently than I would if for a safety driverless robotaxi. So, these are big deals because it creates that awareness, it creates branding, and it gets people used to new technology. So if I had to guess, people have asked me as well, how many robotaxis total are riding around China? And I know that Baidu has about 500 in Wuhan alone, but the rest of the robotaxis that they have in the rest of China don't add up to 500. So if I had to guess, and I would love your guess as well, Lei, I would say less than 1,000 total robotaxis are roaming around China. Some with safety drivers, some without.
Yeah, I'd say it's at least 1,000. That would be my. I wouldn't say thousands, but at least 1,000. So that's the guesstimate. Because Baidu, right? You mentioned alone in Wuhan, it's about 500. So, and not all of them are fully driverless, right? Many of these, which I've ridden recently, have the safety driver.
And compare and contrast that, because Tesla recently had their earnings, and Elon wanted us to focus on the AI aspects of Tesla
Autonomy,
now.
yeah.
So Tesla currently has around 6 million cars on the roads all over the world. And let's assume that they're getting data from all 6 million of these vehicles. So they have a huge lead when it comes to gathering the data. But, and this is where it gets a little dicey, and you and I aren't financial analysts, so I don't want to get into the share price and everything. But if you can't sell more cars, then your lead is going to quickly disappear, because we also have to remember that BYD is putting around 4 million cars this year on the road. And so the lead is huge, but not insurmountable, especially if Tesla doesn't come out with new products and continue to increase demand of their products and sales. So,
Well, the utopia, let's say in a perfect world, is first of all, I think a lot of people may have said this, is that we don't need that many cars on the road if all of them can be utilized, right? It's all about butts. It's all about seats, right? The number of seats. It's almost like airlines, and you don't want to leave them open. Is the auto industry going that way as well? Which means that you don't need that many cars on the road. If you can just hail one and go anywhere where you want. I think that's kind of where Tesla is, or Elon is trying to go toward.
and you make a key point, Lei, because Tesla is willing to concede sales if they can get these robotaxis on the road and start generating revenue. Whereas the legacies are still very traditionally minded with sales, sales, sales.
And then He Xiaopeng, he just posted something, a comment about Elon's model where they're both deploying the technology as well as the fleets. I guess, well, I guess the fleets are not, I mean, they're owned. Are they technically owned by Tesla, or they're Tesla owners? So how do you look at it? Whereas Xpeng's strategy is they're also working on that G9 robotaxi, but I think they're trying to put it in a fleet, but not have someone else operate it.
Well, ultimately, Lei, it's going to be your car. You opt in to sharing that data with Tesla to build up and train the algorithm. And then you can send it out when you're not using the vehicle, and it can make money for you. And then Tesla takes a piece of that. So that's how ultimately you can generate incremental revenue with the vehicle. And Tesla, because they're providing the service, or at least the technology, they take a bit off the top from you. So
Yeah. I think there's also the regulatory part of it that has been talked about on the earnings, and Elon kind of dunked on Mary, the Origin being suspended, because nobody has talked about what happens if these Tesla robotaxis get into accidents. Who's responsible, right?
and that's how he likes it.
Right. So, I mean,
The only guideline we have is that once we, and this is kind of a semantics thing,
yeah,
which is crazy. Once we move to level 3, or an OEM says this is a level 3 plus system, the responsibility for the accident shifts to the OEM. So that's why Tesla is still saying it's a level 2 plus system that they currently have.
yeah.
And because the traditional automakers are just ultra conservative, and Tesla is happy to use us as beta testers, I think that's the major difference in mindsets.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And yeah, exactly. And China has, in recent months, I think, issued guidelines on specifically on these type of let's say, higher levels of autonomous driving and who's responsible under what conditions, it's quite clear the requirements are in place, but I don't see that as clear as in the US yet.
And let's also note that China is also making it up as they go along, because you remember when Meituan had and Xunyi had that autonomous delivery vehicle hit a car turning right. So they settled on who was responsible for it, but these are kind of one-offs, and they need to be enterprise-wide and policies that are bought off by the private sector but enforced by the public sector. So, whereas China can really do a top-down, and this is where another advantage for the Chinese autonomous vehicle companies, at least inside China. In the United States, everything is a state-by-state regulatory environment, which creates huge complications because now we bring in politics.
Exactly. And so at least also Pony has gotten that kind of a approval, receipt of documents for their listing either on NASDAQ or NYSE. They got that approval from the CSRC in April. So I think it's just a matter of time.
So I tweeted, that, or I X'd. How do you even say it now? I said that China AV Inc. They want into the U.S. market. They want to sell things to Americans. They either want to sell shares or they want to sell electric vehicles.
Yeah, and I don't know if you recently saw James Feng, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you got any sense of that IPO in the air, but
the other thing that I wanted to mention, Lei, is that they are so unsure about who the next president is going to be and what their policies will be that they're pulling in this IPO, and they'd rather do it now than next year when it could be unfriendlier, at least the environment in the market.
Yeah, I guess so. There's bit of a both kind of race to do something, whereas on the EV side of it, it's kind of wait and see a bit. maybe that's the way you look at it.
And you know this, but all these companies, Deep Route, Baidu, Pony, WeRide, they all have research development centers in Silicon Valley, in Sunnyvale, in San Jose, in Milpitas. So they're already here too.
Yeah, they've been running. I mean, I've seen quite a few. You probably seen
since day one.
Ponies.
Since day one. So it's not like they recently opened these offices.
And I think in terms of this window of opportunity is also because in the past few years of that investigation from the SEC on the Chinese, the 中概股, the Chinese stocks, right? That's been kind of in the rearview mirror now. So I guess you sense this opportunity and try to find the best time to do it.
I think the leadership at WeRide, they've been around for so long that they're just ready to try to cash out. I think the investors are looking to cash out. And it sounds like last raise, Pony was at an $8 billion valuation, I want to say. So
$8.5 billion, I think.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
So I don't want to speculate yet on what they're targeting, but I think it's going to be oversubscribed. I think there's going to be plenty of people interested in the IPO. So because remember, Li Zhang, who's a co-founder at WeRide, hey, I was asking someone yesterday, what was WeRide's original name? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
It was a Chinese name, but I forget.
It was a Chinese name, exactly. I can't remember,
so
but
I need
it
to
did
look
have
at
a
my
different
notes.
name.
So
Jingchi, I think it was called Jingchi.
Jingchi, okay.
Jingchi, yeah.
But so remember, so Li Zhang has actually moved on from
to the humanoid robot. Yeah, he's one of the founders there.
So we should anticipate, to summarize, Pony by September and WeRide around that time. If I were WeRide, I would try to do it much earlier than the November election date.
Yeah, something to look forward to in the next few weeks, as a matter of fact. We have the big three of China EVs now. I mean, Baidu is already listed, right? So then next comes the other two. And there are a bunch of others, smaller ones that are, that we don't talk about.
So I think QCraft raised a little bit of capital. I know Deep Route. Let me say this again. They're always looking for capital, for sure.
Yeah.
But they do see the Middle East as an alternative for raising funding. So, but again, the U.S. capital markets are the most liquid, and they're going to get the highest valuation out of the U.S. exchanges. So
out of the other options, Hong Kong or China board.
And you wanted to talk about, what was the next thing you wanted to talk about?
Windrose.
Oh yeah, okay. Please.
It's kind of funny that they've kind of suddenly popped up, and I mean it's 2.5-year-old company founded in March 2022.
So for those that don't know who Windrose is, they are designing and engineering a semi truck, battery powered, so an electric semi truck. So think Tesla semi.
Yeah, semi in both the EV, BEV version and a fuel cell version. Yep. And they also
have. Do you know the CEO? Do you know him?
No, I don't know him, but I mean,
I don't know
everything about this company is exactly, if we talk about Windrose, it's the CEO. I think he's the reason behind this really meteoric rise just last, I guess, few months.
So they announced that they are looking to at least
IPO.
Do final assembly. They haven't really clearly indicated if they're manufacturing in the United States or if they're doing final assembly. So there's a big difference here.
Yeah.
And I think it'll depend on how the tariffs affect the products, but they have an order book of 6,000 trucks that are mostly U.S. customers. So I think his name is Wen Hao.
Han. Yeah.
Wen Han. That's right.
Wen Han.
So he basically said, hey, we want to be close to our customers. So didn't say how much they're investing, didn't really describe how large the facility is and what in particular they'd be doing, who's the battery supplier. Very, very, unless you saw more specific information on the Chinese internet, I didn't see anything.
No, I didn't see anything other than the fact that they're currently using JAC's, funny enough, JAC's heavy-duty truck division for contract manufacturing. That's what's been open and open. And I think the significant factor about this company is really this founder. Post 90s, worked at Bridgewater Associates, right, the largest hedge fund, GSR Ventures, which invested in Plus AI, which Han was the CFO of.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Okay.
See that? So why? And GSR Ventures is in fact an early investor in Windrose. So if you connect the dots, this is a finance guy. So he was the CFO of Plus AI for a while. And then the other founder of Windrose is the general manager of Dayun, a heavy-duty truck, which has been like the number 7 or 8 heavy-duty truck manufacturer in China. So I think the investment community likes this kind of tag team. So one has really good finance and connections, right? And the other guy is the tech guy.
Think He Xiaopeng and Brian Gu.
Exactly, yeah. So if you connect the dots, it's not surprising that they've gotten this. I think they recently got the $200 million investment from a Belgian sovereign wealth fund. You don't see that happen very often, right? For a Chinese startup. So this guy has the connections, finance, at least finance.
This is what I'm wondering though, like, wondering if he got blessings from the Chinese government to kind of make these investments, or I'm assuming he did, but because this is a weird time to be announcing this, in my opinion. So
Yeah, and also I guess if you look at from a investment point of view, it's scarce, right? It's unlike the competition is not as cutthroat or bloodbath in the heavy truck segment, the electrification and autonomization of the heavy duty truck segment. So, and then you have, right, the other one, Deepway. There's a bunch of others, but I think it's all about this guy's financial capital market connections.
so maybe some money grab, but like first of all, it's a B2B, so it's less sexy than passenger vehicles. The next thing is if there's a lot of labor in the United States for assembly and manufacturing of these Windrose semis, you're not going to get that cost advantage that you have in China for sure. And so these customers, they must feel pretty comfortable with the politics of, or how it looks, at least. So yeah, it's it's just a very interesting time, right? So
Yeah, and in the US, I mean, if you talk about competition, this side of the game, it's a handful, less than a handful.
there's Nikola,
There's Tesla. Who else? I don't see anyone else. Right?
I know that Peterbilt, Navistar, they're all looking at.
Yeah, but they're truck makers to begin with, right? They're established truck makers.
I guarantee you that most of those guys. So I think Navistar is based out of Chicago. I guarantee you they were shocked, surprised to hear this.
Exactly. And I kind of see a Cheng Lu in this for some reason of Too Simple, because Cheng Lu is also a finance guy, and he took Too Simple IPO, right? So
the product is not in production yet, so
and
a bit of speculation on this.
It's an EV truck to begin with. It's not an AV truck, unlike Too Simple or Plus. So, I mean, you look at it as the Neo or the Xpeng in the truck space, right?
Yeah, it's and somebody asked me, do you know in particular where in Georgia they're going to build this factory?
No clue.
Yeah, me neither. So, but the other thing that's important to note is that Brian Kemp is the governor. He's a Republican, so I'm sure his economic development team set this up.
And with the Hyundai Kia plan about to, or maybe already starting production, right, of EVs there. And Rivian has one, right, in Georgia.
Well, Rivian's pushed it out. It doesn't sound like,
yeah. So
I don't know if they're actually going to build that factory in Georgia, because the Illinois factory is quite large. And why I bring up the whole Brian Kemp Republican thing is because I get a decent number of questions about, isn't this too radioactive to have a Chinese electric vehicle company produce or build a factory in X state or Y state? And I said, I tell them, I'm like, man, if Neo, Xpeng, BYD go to the governor of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and say, I'm going to write a $2.5 billion check and I'm going to employ 10,000 people, are we okay? Are we good? How many of these governors are going to say no? Not many.
Well, they got to think about it, right? They're not going to say no up front. So,
and so I look at that as Brian Kemp. So Brian Kemp doesn't have a great relationship with Trump, and he's a Republican, so he's probably not going to do and fall in line with the policies of the Biden administration. So he's looking out for his state, which I think is important. I think that there's a lot of self-interest, especially post January 2025 when the new president gets sworn in. And we're going to get much more practical with where some of these Chinese EV companies in North America are going to produce vehicles. So,
and which actually, speaking of the election, right? Speaking of presidential election, it's all of a sudden it's not so much one-sided. I feel like, because
it's whiplash. It went from completely one side to now almost balanced.
You put it, almost balanced.
Competitive.
You put a question mark. So who knows?
And what's important is the uncertainty that people have, because if Biden was to be reelected, we know the trajectory of the policies towards Chinese EV companies and battery companies. With Kamala, she's going to want to create her own policies. And so is she going to be a more business friendly president versus Biden? Maybe. We've heard Trump, and there's always uncertainty with Trump whenever he says anything anyways.
Not so clear from Harris, from Kamala. So
yes, which I'd mentioned this in past podcasts, that it's not about the tariffs or the protectionism. It's about the uncertainty that creates the anxiety for our friends, right? The Chinese EV companies, the battery companies, they just want some clarity so they can move forward with their strategies, their global expansion strategies. And so with Kamala now being the Democratic representative, I think they are going to have to, let's say, reorient their lobbyists in Washington.
And I think regardless of the outcome of the election, I think what Jim Farley said in the earnings call, I mean, he was pretty straight. I mean, he said, right, the fitness of the Chinese NEVs will wash over every region of the world, right?
That's effectively what I've been saying for 7 years.
That's right. We've probably been hammering that message for a number of years now.
I don't have the gravitas of a Jim Farley, but that's effectively what.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see that he kind of hinted that he doesn't see, at least Ford is not going the way of Volkswagen Xpeng style partnership, but they are focusing on the CATL, the supply chain part of it, to do it. And it looks like he's betting on the skunk works. And I don't know how he's going to do it. I mean, I don't see it happening when he said the only way that we can beat the small China EV, small cars, is through that skunk works team. I put a question mark on that.
So he's saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Because Mary still hasn't articulated. Well, first of all, GM backed off.
Well, they have a boat. They have the boat, which is okay, I think. Ford doesn't have anything.
The Equinox and the Blazer seem to be doing better now that the software has been updated. Mary has pushed out the Orion assembly plant to build EVs. They've backed away from the 1 million unit production capacity for EVs by 2025. And that's all fine and good. They were never realistic to begin with. So I don't know why she felt the need to articulate these aggressive strategies when they didn't know who they're going to get their batteries from. They didn't know that there was going to be an Inflation Reduction Act. They didn't know that there were going to be 30, 40, 50 Chinese EV companies vying for market share in the China market. So again, why she would make these proclamations 3 years ago or 4 years ago, it boggles my mind.
And now look at it. Everybody's putting their qualifiers on those targets. Porsche, right? Kind of like the where market conditions allow type of qualifier. And the consensus, right, is that the customers make the decision.
Yeah.
And whereas I think China, the customers have already made the decision, right? We're past that point.
Well, the Chinese government, the IRA, I've repeated this a couple times to people, the IRA is less than 2 years old.
Summer
the Chinese
of 22,
government started
right?
investing, the Chinese government started investing in the space in 2009. And we know that things happen much faster in China. It's a different time because now there are a lot of viable Chinese EVs. They're starting to have more viable foreign EVs. And currently, there are some sick deals, Lei, for leasing electric vehicles because I don't think anyone wants to buy them because of the residual craziness. But man, I mean, the Polestar 2s, and I was told the launch edition. So the launch edition, because I'm looking for used vehicles on Carvana and Carguros, and it's still not that cheap. It's like $30,000 for a 22 Polestar 2, but the range is like 260 miles. I was told that a 24 or 25 Polestar 2 now has over 300 miles of range. So software improvements, battery management system improvements. So maybe it's time, man. Maybe it's time, buddy. So.
Yeah.
When's your lease end?
No, I don't have a lease. I have a loan.
Oh,
on a hybrid. Ends next summer. So
so you bought it?
So 36 months.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm paying $500 a month.
Oh, that's awesome. Because
with a Santa Fe hybrid, yeah.
Because right now, I mean, the Santa Fe hybrid's pretty affordable anyways, but right now to borrow $30,000 is probably $800 payment.
Yeah. So, and then after that, I'm gonna, just keep driving it until
the wheels fall off,
until the Rivian R2 comes out.
Oh yeah,
I do have it on order, right?
So, hey, one thing, I don't know if you saw this, Lei, but I posted that currently LFP pricing at the cell level was $53 per kilowatt hour in China, and so I think it's worth having a couple minute chat about that.
I mean, it's been coming down, right?
I've been told by a couple people now that Chinese government does not want CATL BYD to build any more capacity in China because of this, because it's creating unhealthy environment for all of the battery makers, because CATL and BYD are the 800-pound gorillas, and so they're squeezing out the other players, which is what happens when you have intense competition. But in China, it's just a little bit different because
CATL just announced their half-year results. I think there were 46.4% of the China battery installation in the first half of the year. 46.4%.
Oh my God.
And globally in the first 5 months, they were at 37.5%. So also number one.
So here's the reality of it. CATL supplies almost every automaker, foreign or Chinese. And 46% just means that every 2 cells that are built or rolled, if they're cylindrical, one of them's a CATL battery.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And they have an 8 gigawatt hour factory in Germany. They're going to build a 13 gigawatt hour factory in Michigan with Ford.
Also in Hungary, that is being built.
So the pressure for them to grow outside of China is going to be immense. And
it is.
If they can't play the price war game in China too much more, they will play it outside of China in order to gain leverage and customers. So they already have OEM customers, like I said, legacy, whether you're US, whether you're Chinese, French, Italian, or German. But a lot of those companies CATL supplies a lot of those companies only in China. Now, CATL has relationships, but and this is the basics of automotive. And the car guys on this call or on this in the pod will nod their heads. They don't want to give any supplier, OEMs never want to give any supplier that type of leverage.
Yeah.
So they would probably prefer to have another source outside of China than CATL. But at $53 a kilowatt hour, let's say a Panasonic and an LG, and I'm making these numbers up, they can't get close to that. Maybe they're 70, because at the pack level. So what's important to explain as well, and I'm jumping around, so my apologies. So at the cell level, it's $53, whether it's a cylindrical cell, a prismatic cell, or a pouch cell. What happens is the cells get put into modules, and battery pack might have 6, 8, 10 modules. And at the pack level, there are other things going on. And so the cell level and the pack level are going to have 2 different pricing.
Sure.
And the Bloomberg article said at the pack level, it's about $70-something.
Yeah.
And common wisdom was always $100 at the pack level per kilowatt hour. Below that price, companies are making money. And so if we're at $75, there's an opportunity to make money if you have a Chinese Chinese battery supplier, and they're able to supply you outside of China. Because inside China, the price war is putting a ceiling on pricing, and most companies that aren't named BYD and Tesla are holding on for dear life in the China market for now.
Yeah. And speaking of the price war, I think the price war seems to be waning a little bit because of some of these. The ABBs have, I wouldn't say raised prices. Their prices going back to normal.
Come on, Lei. You just say it, man. They were like, no mas. They were like, no mas. No more.
Yeah, we already talked about that last episode. And then now it's right, the country is really looking at it as not, the automakers, they did their job, right? They, whatever the price cuts, the 0%, now the country is giving a hand by doubling the trade-in subsidies or incentives. I mean,
so they doubled down. So the Chinese government doubled down on subsidies again.
Yeah, I mean, this is not only on the passenger NEVs; it's on public transport buses getting like 60,000 MB, almost $10,000 a pop. Old trucks getting 80,000 MB, right? These are, I'm just trying to find ways to really push consumption,
which strengthens BYD, because they're one of the largest electric bus manufacturers as well.
Yeah.
But one thing, and you say that the price war might end, but you and I know that coming into September and October, there's going to be some desperate Chinese EV companies that lower price even further. And so how disciplined can these German automakers on the premium side be? That's the question, because they'll continue to lose market share through 24. You believe that, right?
Yeah. I think they know it as well. So
yeah, but I don't know if their projections go far enough, because I'll be quite frank. I don't think Porsche in 23 thought they were going to lose 15% of their sales, and then an additional 33% in the first six months of this year. To your point, they knew that the market was softening for their products, but that's severe. I wouldn't have guessed that much. I'm kind of the traditional Western mindset where I thought Porsche's brand and their logo and their crust was kind of bulletproof, but it's not. So that's all I have, man.
Yeah, and then you see Tesla extending that 0%, right, to end of August.
So non-price cut.
Yeah. Yeah, and people will use different methods to tweak pricing going forward, definitely.
Free charging, free service, whatever.
Yeah.
The one thing, Lei, that we should mention about the CATL thing that we talked about for a few minutes is that there is a lot of focus from the Japanese and Koreans on the next innovation. And the Chinese battery makers still have the evolution moving towards sodium ion. That's not going to be a fit for every single EV moving forward. It's probably going to be more for the mass market, cheaper vehicles with that will have lower range. But it should be noted that, was it SK? And then Tesla, over the last couple of weeks, there have been articles about the dry coating process on the cathode and how that could drop pricing. So there could be, within the next 3, 4, 5 years, likely 4 or 5 years, a huge innovation that drops the cost of battery prices further.
Even further, yeah.
That's not dictated by a CATL or a BYD. And if that's the case, and CATL and BYD take some time to develop that technology in-house themselves, it's going to be wide open. There's going to be a ton of even more overcapacity if you can't switch over the current lines, and a ton of investment needs to be made to upgrade, change over your factory lines for at least at the cell level, right? So I think it's important to kind of note that, because it seems like the Korean companies and Tesla are able to do them, but not mass produce them yet. That's the biggest challenge, but it seems like they're getting closer.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about, Lei, was my ride in the Lucid Air Sapphire.
Now that's
Holy.
is that the top version or?
Yeah, $249,000.
Yeah, that's the top, right? The 1.8, 1.9.
Oh my God, dude. So we know the newly appointed head of global communications.
I wonder whatever became of one. Nobody thought.
They're grinding. They're grinding.
Okay.
I think they're still looking to raise capital, but
Yeah.
they've been humbled.
Yeah.
You know. So
Lucid.
So Nick, he used to live in Ann Arbor when he was working for Arnix Energy, but I think he's kind of Newark, California, near Fremont, California, right off the 84. If you're familiar with Silicon Valley, that's where Newark is. Fremont is obviously where Tesla is headquartered, and so Newark is the city next to Fremont, and so Lucid is there. And so he came back to Ann Arbor for some meetings and picked me up in the Air Sapphire. Blue, beautiful car. Understated because, at 250, I'm not sure what I was expecting from an interior standpoint, but not much different from normal Air. The IP looks great. The center console looks great to me anyways. It's very simple. But then we were at a red light and he just mashed it, and it's like a roller coaster ride. Like my stomach was still at the red light 3 seconds later, and the G-forces, but you
Makes
know
you a little
how
nauseous.
it made me nauseous.
Right? Yeah.
You'd have been
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
kind of like your Taycan ride.
It's like, yeah, exactly.
And wow. I just wasn't, because in my mind, I can't fathom what 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds feels like. And he did it again. And I was like, dude, you got to stop. I'm going to throw up. And, but he just wanted to show me the capability, and wow, it was crazy. And so, good luck to Nick. He's a good dude. So obviously you and I are rooting for him. So
Yeah, it looks like he's doing a great job.
oh yeah, I've seen a couple of posts where it's like the best thing that Lucid did was hire him. So I think he's going to do a great job.
Very
in
proactive. Yeah.
helping Peter be Peter's mouthpiece, but also
Peter R.
kind of and then one of the guys that I met at Neo through Jeffrey when I was in California last time, he moved over to Lucid. So
Okay.
and I promise everyone that we're gonna move to video hopefully next week.
We'll try that, and but other than that, no. Gonna watch some Olympics, seeing some, because first time on a sign, right, instead of
Yeah.
a stadium. So wonder how that's gonna look like. and also Toyota is the, I guess, exclusive automotive sponsor for the Olympics. So they'll be running some Mirais, EVs, PHEVs, HEVs. But I wonder, right, the next Olympics after that, whether we'll see a BYD or somebody else, right? Who knows?
Well, I did see. I was just in Paris. Obviously, you know that. Like 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of BYD stuff.
Yeah.
So they seem to be quite bullish on the European market. But I also looked at French pricing for some of their products, BYD in particular, and they're not cheap.
Not cheap.
So-
no, exactly.
We're talking 70, 80,000 euro expensive. So don't know how long that's going to last, because there's not 90,000 euro value, 80,000 euro value in a BYD, full stop. The other two things, Lei, because we should touch on Ford share price reaching its lowest point since 2009. For those that don't remember, 2009 was when the financial crisis happened. They wrote an $800 million check. I want to say $800 million for warranty costs. So
I mean,
basically the vehicles that they build over the last 3 or 4 years has been crushed.
it's shocking. shocking that this was still bottom, this warranty cost. I mean, this day and age.
The other thing too is this is pre-Tavares, pre-Stellantis, but Stellantis paid $500 million or $400 million in fines from the EPA because they didn't meet their CAFE targets. So these guys are almost writing $1 billion check because they didn't hit their targets. And this was FCA, not Stellantis. So significant hits to pocketbooks and bank accounts for the legacy OEMs. So you almost see this as an own goal because they need every ounce of profits to reinvest towards their future. And so, but you and I knew that these companies were going to have really, really difficult times in order to make that transition. Some will be more successful than others, but this is just part and parcel of transforming the industry, transforming and them trying to keep up with it. So yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining. We will talk with you all next week. Hopefully we will see some of you because we'll try to launch that channel. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, and we will talk with you all next week.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.